All right, here's a guide to unlock your true self. Now, listen, remember, this whole world requires patience because I know you're not used to being you. You're used to reading the script given to you about you versus crafting one for yourself. I'm going to give you 3 steps and 3 things that you can do to unlock that now so you can start living your true self in this world, in this life, and for the rest of your life. The first thing I want you to talk about or think about is self-reflection. Now, this is one of those things that gets overlooked, or it's a buzzword, but it doesn't really quite happen as often. I need you to start thinking about, who am I based on my day? What happened during my day? What's important to me? That I meet my goals, not from just a task-oriented thing, but from who I am. One of the ways you can do that is in the morning, having quiet time. Literally just taking 5, 10 minutes, 20 to 30 is even better, to ask yourself, what am I doing? What's the plan? How do I want to feel today? Again, less about the task, more about who you are, what's showing up in your life, what's missing. One of the ways to do that is to meditate. This is a very common thing done for eons, but for me, it's still fairly new over these last several years. In fact, I used to get it most when I would work out and run. That's why I'm telling you this. I want you to understand that meditation doesn't have to come in one form or another. But one simple way, starting out, is to take 5 minutes by yourself and just breathe. Being present to your breath helps you get present to your mind and present to your body, connecting your heart and your mind, heart and mind, in a way that allows you to just get here, now. Not thinking about yesterday and the heartache that came with it, the disappointment, or even the success for that matter. I used to call this thing called Al Bundy syndrome. You guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But there was a TV show years ago where the star, the guy on the show, his name was Al Bundy. And one of the things that he'd always talk about is how great he was in football. Now, that guy was late 50s, still talking about high school football. And so while that's probably not your situation, anytime you reflect too much on the past of what was, you miss out on what's now and what's possible. And so getting present becomes super key when you talk about self-reflection. It's reflecting, but it requires being present. And in being present, what am I feeling? Am I feeling anxiety? If so, where is that coming from? Am I feeling fear? If so, where is that coming from? Am I feeling hope? If so, where is that coming from? Because hope and fear, according to the Tao Te Ching, good read, hope and fear come from the same source. One is on the absence of, one is on the hope for. But in both situations, neither one is present. And it's not wrong that you hope or you fear. It's what you're doing with it. Where is it coming from? What's stimulating the fear? Is it a past success? Is it an anxiety about the future? What's stimulating the hope? Is it I simply feel good in my body? By the way, if you do, you want to duplicate similar diet activity that you probably had the day before, or physical activity, because that's going to continue to create that. But you don't know if you don't take time to reflect. How does my body feel? What's in my space? And what's blocking me from being here and now? So self-reflection, one of the coolest things that you need to do by allowing yourself to feel, discover what's your passions feeling like, what's your body feeling like, what are your urges and desires in the moment, what are you craving. Those sorts of things can help you self-correct. Now, let's layer that a little bit further. When you're self-reflecting, one of the other things you want to do in the evenings, I highly recommend, if you don't do it in the mornings, is go back over, did I accomplish the goals? How did I feel throughout my day? Did I feel like I wanted to feel in terms of goals? Did I accomplish the things that were in my heart to do? Did I love people? Did I interact? Did I serve the world in the way that comes from me? Or was I robotic? Was I task-oriented? Again, nothing wrong being task-oriented, but if that's governing who you are, you could be missing out. And if you don't take the time to reflect, what happens is you end up on this hamster wheel of life and you just do what you do because that's the thing in front of you to do. One of the things I love about millennials is they're like, that's the thing in front of me to do. Hold on. That's not working. I'm going to change. I'm going to take the risk to do that. We'll tap into that a little bit more in a moment. But if you're not self-reflecting, you don't know. And if you're not self-reflecting on a daily basis, what tends to happen is you'll find that you're stuck in what you're doing for months, for weeks, for years. And you're wondering, wait, where did the time go? As a papa, I'm here to tell you, time is going to fly. It's going to fly. I can't tell you why it's that way, but it's why it's so important that you reflect on a daily basis and recount, how am I showing up in my life? Base it on what you wrote down about who you are. Base it on what you wrote down about what you want for your life. How am I stacking up? Is what I'm doing now going to get me where I'm trying to go? Yes or no? And hopefully where you're trying to go isn't just this idea pie in the sky, Instagram, validate against somebody else's success, but rather what came from within here when you were self-reflecting. Oh, it's such a beautiful circular process that's super beneficial. So take the time to self-reflect. The second thing I want you to do is have fearless expression of who you are on this planet. Now, again, we talked about what's acceptable in society compared to who you are. They may not match. And in no way am I encouraging you to be this obnoxious person. What I'm saying, for example, is if you're a happy person, you don't need to dumb down your happiness when you get around people who tend to be bummers. You get to be who you are, and you get to respond while being mindful of who they are in a way that keeps your spirits uplifted. Let me give you a quick example. One of the things that's shown up in my life is this desire, this innate desire in my family to be right. That's one of the things that we used to want to do. And so I very much wanted to be right. And I would want to show up thinking this is who I am. And I would kind of force my opinion on people to prove out some things or to feel like I'm validated. And I discovered that that wasn't always welcomed, nor was it always cool. But it was a false sense of who I was. It wasn't me being fearless in my expression. So instead, now that I've self-corrected, I now go to positions and places and I'm learning, wait, what's that inside of me? That's me yearning to be validated. And so when I'm learning to be validated, I then go, well, why is that? And so I may, instead of trying to have an answer, I may ask another question to allow me to dig deeper. What do you mean? I'm saying I'm expressing what's lacking or what I need in a way that someone else might be able to give it to me, share it, and exchange it with me. And that's not easy. It's kind of like Instagram, right? Everyone wants to put out how great life is. And that's cool. But every now and then, does anything challenging show up? I'm not suggesting that any of us put all of our life on social media. I mean, that's not what it's for, at least in my opinion. But if every day is good, how then do we get to be human and actually empower other people? Taking that risk, I talked about being vulnerable in other videos, that's a big deal. The same is true with your expression in life. Your individuality and showing up the way you are, whether that's your fashion, whether that's your channel, whatever that is, in the way that reflects you is a big deal. I know for me, I've never wanted to always post every day and all those things that everybody else is doing because it was the thing to do. I just instead wanted to always come from the heart. At the same time, I wanted to give people what was inside of me. And it wasn't until that I began to get clear about, wait a minute, I'm always wanting to encourage people, that I got to get comfortable with doing it my way. Whether my background matched or not, whether I had the perfect lighting or not, it came down to, hey, I need to give. And when I began to do that, it's like, oh man, this feels good to me. But I had to also be willing to understand that while that feels good to me, finally getting into the habit of contributing and sharing through social media, I also had to be willing to understand some of the content that I put out, people are not going to like, and be okay with that. I also had to understand sometimes the content I put out might only touch one person. You see, being willing to be me and fearless means I have to be willing to accept that if only one person likes it, loves it, then that's enough. Because it's not about the likes, the loves. It's about expression. Because if I'm expressing, then I'm giving to the planet and I'm fulfilled in that alone. But you have to be willing to be the person who's willing to express without validation from the outside. You have to be willing to give love whether it comes back to you or not. And I know that might sound crazy, but if love is what's flowing through you and you choke it off, then you choke off yourself. And this is why self-expression is so necessary. The fastest way to die in spirit is to cut off who you are and surrender to the societal norm, which, by the way, is ever declining. It's ever declining. Just look around. The more we mirror and parrot one another, the less authenticity comes through about who we are, because we've wrapped ourselves up in the outward validation of our self-expression or validation of who we are. And what I'm saying to you is you are needed for who you are, even though right now no one may be chasing after you. For example, when I was growing up, dirt biking was one of those things that certain kids did, wild kids or whatever it was, and it wasn't a thing. And then as I began to get older, they kept dirt biking, and it was kind of like, what are you guys doing? Societal norm. You should have a job and be out there working. Well, I mean, as you guys know now, I mean, like they have their own clothing companies. They're in the Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics. They have competitions. They have video games. They're making a killing by being themselves the entire time. That's part of what it looks like, being willing to accept no one else might get it. But for the fulfillment of who you are, so that when you go to sleep at night, you have peace, you've got to be willing to self-express yourself. You got to be willing to be fully self-expressed. Now, the last element I want to share with you is being empowered from your authenticity. Yeah. So one is being fearless about delivering it. The other is being empowered by it. You see, great leaders only come about by nurturing their spirit around who they are, by getting alone and stop listening to the voices outside of them and developing themselves. One of the phrases I used a moment ago was nurturing your spirit. That's one of the things that I love to do. If I don't feel peace inside of me, I automatically know it means I haven't nurtured my spirit. What does that mean, Marquise? To nourish your spirit and be empowered through your authenticity. Well, for me, that looks like doing a few things. One, that could be listening to YouTube videos about self-development, or perhaps reading a biography about someone, not so that I can become them, but so that I can look inside and see, how am I showing up in my life? Am I fully expressing what's there for me? Another way that might happen is, am I spending enough time in nature or with music to just hear my thoughts and sort through what's true and what's not true? Am I comparing myself against myself? That empowerment, that checks and balance on the inside, from what I believe in my spirit that was given to me, is how I nurture my spirit. By being around people who are maybe somewhat like-minded, but very clear about who they are, and just exchanging. Finding out, am I really showing up in the areas of my life? Another way may be looking at the 7 major areas of life. There's 6 or 7. You can group them how you want. Spiritual, financial, social, mental, relational, emotional. Checking in those areas based on who I believe I am on the planet. How am I stacking up here? And then taking a deeper dive to grow those areas that are weak so that I can show up. Those are the 3 things that you can do to begin to really understand who you are, to begin to really tap into this idea of simply becoming who you are, becoming authentic, being clear about that. Take the time. Take the time to self-reflect. Take the time to walk through and be fearless in your expression on the planet. And last but not least, take the time to embrace and empower your authenticity by putting disciplines in place that help you win. I need you to like, share, comment, subscribe to this, and send it to people so that I can continue to add value to more. Thank you. I love you. Peace.